The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Randy Rafi. I'm the Director of Sales with Silex Software. We're here today to present on management pack authoring using Fragments. Our special guest and your presenter today will be Kevin Holman from Microsoft. Just a little bit of housekeeping first. If you have any problems, you can contact info@silex.com. I am recording the session, and that'll be made available as soon as we have it uploaded. And please feel free to answer or ask questions as you go through the session. We'll also have a couple of polls to share with you. A little bit on the agenda, a few slides, and then Kevin's going to get right into a presentation using MP Author. He'll talk about the history of authoring tools, help us understand what fragments are, and then get right into the demo. We'll have some time for a Q&A, and then we'll do a wrap-up. Silex Software was founded in 2003, and over that period of time, 13 plus years, we've introduced reporting tools, authoring tools, and more recently, the High Trust Pack for compliance monitoring and reporting.
Andy?
Yes?
I don't think you're sharing your screen.
Thank you, Michael. That would help.
Maybe you want to start the recording?
Okay, the recording is going, and we are now sharing my screen. Thank you. Can you see it now, Mike?
Yes, I can.
Very good.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so just to finish up on this slide, Silex Software also offers services, custom development, management packs, baselines. We can help you with your OMS requirements, Power BI, and Azure. So we're also happy to announce that we'll be releasing version 7.2 of MP Author Professional, and MP Studio. I'm going to just take a minute and plug the current sale we have on. This is a flash sale. In the 13 years I've been here, this is the best price we've ever had for MP Studio. So 50% off is a limited time to get this, so don't delay. This offer is available until the end of March. Okay, so just in summary, there will be a survey at the end. Please take a minute and complete that. The whole kit will be sent to you, the slides, question and answers. Take advantage of that special offer, and we will also be emailing a download link for the 7.2 version of MP Studio. It'll have an eval license in there, and we'll also be hosting an MP University event on May 3rd. So that's it for slides. And we're going to start off just before I hand things over to Kevin. I'm going to launch the first poll of 2. And I'll ask you to just take a minute and complete that. You should be seeing that on your screen. Go ahead and fill that out if you don't mind. So there's quite a few people on the call. We're going to let that run for just a little bit longer. Okay, so I think so far it's looking like a just about a 50-50 split there. I'm going to share this up on the screen. Hopefully you'll be able to see that as well. So that's 49% answered yes, 51% answered no, and we're also going to launch the second poll. We'll get those out of the way. Okay, and you should be seeing the second poll. This one's basically, if you don't mind checking all those that apply, that would be awesome. We'll let that run for a couple more seconds. Okay, very interesting to see, over 50%, 55% using XML editing directly, 75% SCOM console, 45% Visual Studio, 55% MP Author, and 30-some percent SCOM 2007. So I'm just going to share that. Hopefully you can see that. And now let's turn things over to Kevin. And Kevin, I am about to make you the presenter. And I'm going to keep myself online here until I can hear you. I'll confirm your audio and we can see your screen as soon as you share that up.
Okay.
I see your screen and I can hear you well, so I'm just going to mute myself. But just a reminder, please feel free to submit questions. We've got lots of people on the call here to answer your questions as we go through the webinar. Okay, over to you, Kevin. Thank you.
All right, great. All right, thanks everyone for attending. Today we're going to talk about management pack authoring with the Fragments and using Select MP Author Pro. So I don't know if everyone on this call was able to attend my last session, but I did a very similar one in one of the MP University events where I talked about using Visual Studio and Fragments. And this is kind of a carry-on to that conversation. So Select really liked the concept of Fragments and the way that we use them in Visual Studio, so they've added that functionality into MP Author Pro. And it's really cool. It takes something that was already really fast and it just makes it incredibly, incredibly fast. And you'll see that demonstrated today. I'm going to go really slow just so everyone can kind of understand the concepts, but you'll really grasp how fast you can create management packs using these fragments. So if it's the first time you've ever seen fragments, then don't worry, I'm going to give a brief background on what they are and how they work. So you will get to look at a little XML today, but that's good because we saw several of the people responded. 58% XML edit directly, so it won't be anything new for you. All right, so a brief history on the authoring tools that we've had in place, and we kind of covered these in the survey, but everyone's familiar with the SCOM authoring pane, where you just go and those are wizards that behind the scenes just generate XML. You are limited though to what wizards exist. So if you wanted to, for instance, write a PowerShell-based monitor, that wizard does not exist out of the box in SCOM, and you would have to figure out another way to do that. The same thing for anything that's advanced. If we don't have a good GUI-driven expression filter, anything that's really, really advanced, you pretty much have to do an XML or use an advanced tool. So we introduced in SCOM 2007 the authoring console, and this was a standalone utility that you would install. We updated it for 2007 R2, and we pretty much stopped development there. This was incredibly powerful. It let you make really complex workflow. Advanced management pack authors would use this tool. It wasn't really IT pro focused because it could get incredibly complex. It had some wizards that made things easy, but overall, I still use this tool today. There's certain scenarios where if I need to make something really complex and I don't want to do it directly in XML, I'll use the R2 authoring console. So still valid. We had a Visio tool for the guys that remember that. It was incredibly short-lived because it was incredibly short capable. It was kind of like a one-way tool using Visio. It was a neat idea, but it never took off and it wasn't very useful. So we've abandoned that. Everybody edits XML directly. You guys have, you may use Notepad or Notepad++ or, Visual Studio, whatever you use to go directly into the XML. And then when we shipped 2012, VSAE, or what we call Visual Studio Authoring Extensions, became our default for management pack authoring. A lot of people did not use it, didn't pick it up. It was the people who developed management packs for a living or already had development experience that tended to gravitate towards that. But customer adoption was really low because the user experience was quite poor for somebody that was used to a wizards-based solution. And that kind of entered in MP Author. So Select created the original MP author to be that IT Pro monitoring or management pack development tool. Really simple wizards for the most common scenarios. And then they later came out with MP Author Professional, and they've had MP Studio for as long as I can remember. So that kind of rounds out the authoring tools, and we're going to focus on MP Author Pro today. So what is a management pack fragment? It's really just a small piece of XML. It's not an entire management pack, it's part of a management pack. It includes as much or as little of an MP as you want, and it basically contains the working parts. So it could be a rule, it could be a monitor, it could be a class, it could be a discovery, or it could be any combination of those things. So it basically comes down to, we create fragments for things that we want to use over and over again. And so this allows us to very quickly take something that maybe took a long time to write the first time, and if we save it into a fragment, it makes it really easy to go back and use it over and over for different scenarios, and you're going to see that today. So it takes things that are complicated and it makes them really easy to use. Something that I might have to go through a wizard and look at, enter data in on 15 different screens to get to the end, I can do it in 15 seconds using a fragment. And you'll easily see that today. So we can use fragments. They were designed around Visual Studio and our authoring extensions, but now with Silex tool, we can put them into, consume them in Visual Studio or MP Studio and MP Author Pro. And I'm going to be demoing MP Author Pro. So let's take a look at that. If, what's a fragment? This is just a management pack fragment, and very simply kind of the concept, this management pack fragment contains really one rule. That's it. And so if I wanted to reuse this rule over and over again, I would grab this little snippet of XML. So what I've done is I've come up with this concept of all of the things that we might want to change on a regular basis and put it in a standardized format. And the reason we do this is because it reduces the amount of stuff I have to type in every time I want to create a new rule or a monitor or discover an application. So, your company ID would just be your company name, the app that you're developing this to target to, the class you want to target, and the event ID, the event source, and the log name. These are the typical things that you kind of provide when you use a wizard. And so the fragment contains all of that, and you'll see down in the body of the XML, you'll see these tags throughout. And essentially, the concept of fragments is we're going to use find and replace. And so the way we would do that in Visual Studio, and I'm just going to give a quick overview of how to do that, is we would go and create a new project, and we would choose what type of management pack we want, and we would give the management pack a name and an ID, and let that kind of build that MP. And then we would come in and add an existing item, browse our fragment library, and we would pick what we want to use. So for this example, I'll just choose a class and discovery. And within this class and discovery, you can see that standard format that I showed you earlier, where there's certain things that we're always going to replace. And so in Visual Studio, I would do this a little more complicated scenario where I would do find and replace throughout the XML, and you'll see down here below the XML is changing. So this works really well, it's really fast, but using MP Author, they've removed that need to find and replace throughout and popped up a UI that recognizes these tags, and so we'll transition right off into that. So what I'm going to demo today is very similar to the demo I gave using VSAE and Fragments, where I've got this fictitious company called Fabricam, and Fabricam is constantly getting requests to monitor applications, and there's all sorts of scenarios that might or might not exist for that app. So the first thing we need to do is we need to write something that will discover the app so we can target our workflows just to that app. We need to maybe monitor the app has a service. Maybe the app spawns processes that we want to capture. We want to collect performance data so that we can run reports on it. Perhaps the app has perf data exposed that we want to monitor specifically in a monitor, not a rule to collect. There's events that get logged to the application event logs that we would want to trigger on and generate alerts. And then, of course, we want to create views and scope those views using groups so that we can expose this to the business in a really logical way where they can just see data around the application. Now, you can do all of this, for the most part, using the existing tools you have today. But you might use a combination of 3 or 4 different tools to accomplish these goals. And the process, you'd be jumping around and importing and exporting and testing. And what I'm going to show, and this is just a subset of all we have available, is how quickly you could do this. I could literally put this together in probably 5 minutes using MP Author. It's that fast because of some of the enhancements they've made. So let's take a look at it. I'm going to fire up MP Author. And I'm going to create a new management pack. And I'm just going to call this fab.myapp. And let's see if I have this directory yet. Nope, that'll work then. And we need to pick who we're developing this for. So this is just the minimum level of references. I want this to be able to be imported on SCOM 2012 or 2016, so I'm going to choose 2012. And I just want to create an empty management pack. So I'll finish that up. And that will open up my management pack editor here directly. And so this is kind of the cool thing that they've added. There's a import fragment button right here on the title bar. I can just click that and browse. And what I need to do is go get a fragment. Now, where do I get fragments? Fragments have been around forever. And one of the challenges is everybody talked about fragments, but nobody published a library that people could actually use. The assumption was every MP developer would go build their own fragment library. And that's still somewhat true. We still expect that customers are going to enhance fragments and build their own. But I came up with this concept of if somebody just developed a library of the most common things that we need to do on a repeated basis, that would make life so much easier and it would speed adoption of this process. So that's what I did. So if you look in the console, when you import a fragment, there's actually a link to download a fragment library, and that will take you to a place where you can go download my fragment library that I publish, and there will be other authors that publish fragments as well. So I think one of the biggest challenges is there just wasn't a good platform for people to share these, or it wasn't widely adopted enough that people would invest in that, and I think we're going to start to see that changing. So you can go download this today from the TechNet Gallery, and I keep a kind of a running version here of all the updates that I make, and so I literally updated it today. I'm constantly, as customers are coming to me and asking me for new fragments, I'm always adding new ones to this list. So okay, so that's how that works. So we're going to browse, and our first goal for FabricCam was we wanted to discover an app. And as you can see, I've got this large list of classes and discoveries. And I can choose registry, I can run a script, I can do SNMP, I can do WMI. So for the purpose of the demo, I'm just going to choose a registry key. And notice what it brought up here. It automatically populated company ID, app name. These were those things encapsulated in that pound, and it remembers the last ones I did. So I can change these on the fly. make changes, and it will, each time I use the screen, it will remember the previous setting. And it will only expose to me something I need to change. So there's a browser built in for the reg key path, so I can choose any reg key that I want to look for in this system. So I'm going to use the existence of the spooler service to discover this app. That's one of many different ways to do it. And I have ones for reg values. I have ones to match an expression, and then you can enhance these and build your own. So there's a couple things that I do in the fragment. I add comments that explain what each fragment does and any formatting that you might need to know or understand. There's also a section that shows the references that are required, and you don't need to know this or understand it. NP author actually takes and consumes that and will automatically add any reference management packs that you need, which is really cool because that's a pain point in Visual Studio when you're building. It's a much more complicated process, and they've made it super easy here. So you'll also notice as I click on certain sections up top, it highlights that in the XML. It's showing me what it's going to change and how that's going to look in my XML. So if you care about the XML, great. If you don't care, don't look at it. Just focus on what's here in the title bar. So I'm going to hit import, and that's it. So I needed 3 pieces of data, and it created a lot of XML. If I go into here, I can say, show me the class. Here's my my fab.myapp.class that it created. There's a discovery that it created to discover that class. If you wanted to go deep diver into this, you could edit the XML and view it. You could actually make changes, and you'll see I put comments in here that kind of explain what each setting is, because that's one of the hard parts about XML is knowing what's possible, and by adding some comments in here, it makes it a lot easier for you guys to use. So, okay, so that's my class and discovery. I could save that, and I could literally deploy it, and it would discover that application in my infrastructure. But we're going to do a couple more things. So the next thing was we want to monitor a service. So let's do that. And so, whoops, wrong one. There we go. And I'm going to import a fragment. And I'm going to go down to the monitor section of Fragments, and here's monitor service with alert. Well, that sounds good. I'll pick that. And as you can see, anything that it already knew about, it pre-populated. Now the class ID has changed slightly, and so I'm going to use my browser. So the browser is really cool. I can target this to my class, or if I wanted to, I could target to a generic class. So if I wanted this to run on all machines, I could choose like Windows Server Operating System. But again, it's going to default to what it remembers as your last option that you chose. And then there's also a browser for the service name. So this was a service monitor. They recognize that. And so I can choose browse, and I can look through the list of services on my local machine or a network-based machine and go find that specific service that I want, and it will automatically populate that. So in this case, I really only had to choose 2 items because the others were pre-populated. And as I use this, it'll get faster and faster because these are common repeatable tags that are in almost every workflow. So I'll choose import, and I'm done. The next one was process. So we'll go and import fragment. I will browse. And let's choose monitor process. So I have a monitor here for the process. And look, pre-populated my company ID, my app name, the class I want to target. So all I have to pick is my process name. And again, they've included a browser. It'll list all the running processes that it can see on this system or a network-based system. So I'm going to choose the spooler service because I'm just using print as an example here, and you can again look at the XML as it goes. I'll choose import. This is great. I am missing a reference. So because I'm doing something new, it's telling me, hey, this XML fragment uses the process monitoring library. It has a reference to it that's required. If I was using Visual Studio, this would cause like a failure to build, and then I'd have to go read the documentation as to why it's failing, and then go find that specific version that it's looking for, that it has a reference. They've got it all in. It just says, do you want me to add this missing reference? Yes, thank you. Okay. And that's it, we're done. So let's take a checkpoint. So we added that class for my app. Here's 2 monitors, one for the service and one for the process count. And notice all these names, everything's pre-named. You didn't have to provide any of that data. This is just very standardized naming schemes. You're free to change them. You can totally come in here and update anything, but the concept of Fragments is to ask you for as little data as possible and give you really standardized monitoring. And then what you can do is, if you know you want to change your rule fragment, just go change that fragment, and the next time you use that and every time thereafter, it'll have those changes that you wanted to make to it. We haven't done any rules yet, so let's do that now. So let's do a rule that's going to collect performance. So I would come down to my rules section, and here's a performance collection from perfmon. So I'll choose that fragment. Now this one's a little more complicated. It's got quite a few things that it's asking me for. So it pre-populated all of this, and it remembers that I've gone through this example before, so it pre-populates the last perf counter you used. But again, they've included a nice browser. So I can choose that browser. I can look through the perfmon data that's on this box or a network-based box, and I can pick which one that I want, the instance and the counter name and the object name, and choose that. And then how often do I want to collect it? Now 60 seconds, that's a little too frequent. So I'm going to default to 5 minutes here for my perf collection. And that's it. I'm done. There's nothing else for me to configure. That's a rule. And another reference that's missing, but it will just automatically add it for me. So all I have to hit is yes. And there's our rule that's going to collect the application performance. So at this point, it's probably good. Let's go ahead and save it, and I'll show that we can deploy directly to our management group. So I'll right-click my app and choose deploy, and you can put in your credentials and what server you want it to actually deploy to. And it's going to connect to the SDK, and it's going to say, hey, this is the version of the management pack. It doesn't exist on the server. If it did, it would show it to you. And then just choose deploy. And you can see there's a little progress bar down here in the lower left-hand corner that's showing me that it's going. And when it's complete, it will pop up and just give me a message that, yep, it's successfully deployed the application management pack. All right, so we're going to let that bake. That'll let those discoveries start to kick off, and we'll continue on. So we've done an application. We've discovered it. We've monitored the service, the process. We've collected performance. So the next things we want to do is monitor for perfmon. Where we've collected it. We haven't done the monitor yet. And then we'll do monitor for some events. So I will kick back into MP-Author, and again, import fragment. I'm going to browse, monitor, consecutive samples performance. So I've got a fragment for that. I'll choose open, and look at this, everything is populated. So that's actually the one I wanted to monitor. I want to look for jobs in a print queue. But since this is a monitor, I want to check more frequently. So I'll change this to every 60 seconds or 1 minute. And that's it. Oh, I take that back. I got to scroll down. So I need to give it the threshold for how many jobs is considered bad. And since this is consecutive samples, how many samples do I want it to look at before it generates the alarm? So I'm just going to say 2 consecutive samples. And if I have more than 2 jobs waiting, turn the monitor state unhealthy and import, and I'm done. So the next one was an alert generating rule. So I'm going to browse, and under rules, here's an alert generating event log fragment. And so I have several different scenarios to choose from, and you can again enhance and build your own. Everything is pre-populated. It remembers the last things I did. And so in this case, I can do like give it the event ID, give it the event source. I can browse for the logs that are available and on this system or a network system. So I'm just going to choose the application log. And that's it. That's all I have to provide. Again, really, really fast, incredibly fast. I might want to do that over and over again. Maybe I want an alert on an 868. I just make one change. That's another rule. 869 and import, that's another rule. And if I go here and look at rules, you can see it's creating them all. I can make changes to them, but very, very fast. There's no UI wizard-based tool that's going to generate management packs that fast. It's just incredibly quick, very easy to change. Minor things that provide the monitoring you're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And actually, we'll wait to deploy it. There's a couple more that I want to get started on. One of the neat things we can do is we can create fragments that create views and groups. Groups can be incredibly complicated to write using the UI and the tools. I've probably written 15 blog posts on creating groups alone with advanced expressions. So using fragments for common groups that you want to create makes it really, really easy to implement. So let's go ahead and import a fragment. And I'm going to browse. And the first thing I wanted to show was the views. So I've created a fragment that has a folder for the management pack, a state view, an alert view, and a perf view, all scoped to the custom class that we created. So I'm going to hit OK, and I don't have to provide any data. It's pre-populated with everything. There's my company ID, the app name I want it scoped to, and the class ID. And so you can see in here that there's an alert view, there's a perf view, and there's a state view associated with this. So that's it. I just choose that fragment and hit import. And now let's move on to groups, and then we'll go look at how all of this appears in SCOM itself. So I'm going to import a fragment, and I'm going to browse. And so the first group, so I have this group, class.group section, is I want a group of all my class instances. So I might want to use this for overrides or for scoping or building distributed applications. So I'll start there. And again, I have to provide no data. It's just the company ID, the app name, and the class instance that I want this to contain the group. All the XML is pre-written in the fragment. So I'll hit import. There's another reference that I'm going to need for the instance group library. So I'll just say yes. And that covers that group. If I wanted to look at those, I could come in here to classes and I could see there's my fab, my app, instances group. I'll import another fragment. So another common request is I may have an app, but I want a group of the actual Windows computer objects that contain that app so that I can scope, monitoring views and let my customer not just see data around their app, but even the server, all of the OS and hardware and anything that's going on that box that contains their app. And so to do that, I need a Windows computer group. And another thing I like to add to these are the health service watcher objects. It's very common that when we're scoping groups to notifications, that customers want to see critical issues or alerts that are generated about their servers, but they also want to know up-down. And that comes from the Health Service Watcher. It's a unique class. And so customers for years have been having to edit that XML directly to find out how to add the Health Service Watchers, and it's very complex. But by using something like a fragment, it's literally all done for you. So all that complicated expression is already written. All you have to provide is company ID, app name, and the custom class. The rest is done. So I literally hit import, and I'm done. So I'm going to save that, and we're going to go ahead and deploy it. And what you can see here, my current version is 4, and it connected to the server, and it saw the server has 2. So that's good. That's an update. So it's I've got my status bar down here. It's letting me know that he's deploying that management pack, and very quickly I should get a pop-up. And he's successful. Okay. All right. So let's review what we did. We discovered the app through a reg key. We monitored the service for the spooler service, the process, which was a special process name. We collected perf data and monitored perf data. We wrote 3 event rules. We created views that are scoped specifically to my app, and then we created groups, both groups for the app and then groups for the computers and the health service watchers. Now, I went really slow and explained this as I went, but you can kind of start to see that if you were doing this on a very repeatable basis, I could have written this entire management pack in 5 minutes. And that would have been unheard of through any other tool that we've ever issued before. So this is really, really groundbreaking from that perspective in the speed that you're able to do things. Now this, of course, it depends that you have a fragment available to make it fast. So I spend the majority of my time writing new fragments. That's still where the time investment is. Nothing's going to make that easier. And I'm going to use those existing authoring tools like MP Author or Visual Studio or the R2 authoring console or the SCUM console itself to generate that first piece of XML, and then I will use that XML to create a fragment. So how do I create my own fragment? One of the cool things that I'm including is an empty fragment piece of XML, so that it's just a kind of a template for creating your own. And so what I've done is here's the management pack fragment, and what I've done is I've added the most common tags that I use, and all you have to do is just delete any that you don't use. Here's the section where you provide what your fragment does. Here's the standard reference management packs. You can certainly add your own, but these are the standard ones that I use in my fragments. So you just delete any that don't apply. And then here's just a simple section of XML that covers like type definitions, monitoring, views, and then language packs. And so you can just, if you were doing a rule, you could just paste your XML right in here. Make sure that you set it up to be fragmentized, or to accept those tags like company ID, app name, class ID, and then save it, and now you have your own fragment for something that you've done. So if you've written some complex, cool stuff and you want to be able to reuse it or share it easily, turning it into a fragment allows you to do that. So let's take a look at SCUM. I can see that here's my SCUM console, and I can see that, yep, there's version 4 of my management pack. If I come into the monitoring pane and I scroll down, actually I'm going to stop a service, so this will go ahead and trigger an alarm. You can see I've got a folder, Fab My App, so it automatically created that based on the naming scheme that I provided, company ID and app name. And I can see, there's my alert view, my performance view, and my state view. So I'll start with the state view. And you can see here's all the instances of my app and their current health state. So I can see that I have a problem on SCUM 1. I typically use typical tools at this point to troubleshoot. My performance monitor for the number of print jobs is over the threshold. So the last sample value was 4. My threshold was 2. So that monitor is working. I can look at all the monitors that I've written. So here's my spooler service monitor, my process count monitor, my the performance monitor for the number of jobs. They all show up in Health Explorer. If I look at my alert view, it's scoped to just my app. So my customer who's very focused on his app, he can see, yep, my service isn't running. There's a performance issue where we breached a threshold. And then I've got performance views as well, where I can look at very specific, let me select a time range here and say last hour. Yeah, so we haven't been collecting performance long enough. I've only got one data point. This is collecting every 5 minutes, but very quickly I would be able to see all the different performance collections that my performance rule is collecting here. So really, really quick, really easy. discovered the app, applied all this monitoring. And another thing that I wanted to show is the groups. So I'm going to go into authoring groups, and I'm going to search on Fab. Let's do a refresh. They haven't showed up yet. There they are. So here's my app instances group that we created, view group members, and this is an instance of the application itself in the group. So this is what I would use for notifications or views where I only wanted information about the application itself. And then here's my computers and health service watchers group. Let's look at that. Yep, there they all are. The Windows computer object and the health service watcher. So I can use this for notifications for up, down, or any of the information about the server that's hosting my application. So pretty cool, pretty fast. I thought about doing something like let's see how fast Kevin can run through this, because you can see once you've pre-populated that stuff, it just becomes incredibly fast that you can write, very rich management packs really quickly. You can do a lot of things that normally you'd have to use 3 or 4 tools. I can just do them all in one place as long as I have those fragments. So the MP Author Pro totally supports this today. You can also use Visual Studio. It's just MP Author Pro makes it a lot easier with the references and the data entry, and they make it a lot less error prone. And then you can download that fragment library from the links, and I'm going to share all of that information as well with where to go get that if you didn't see it. I have a step-by-step on using Visual Studio, and I have a feeling I'll be writing some of that for MP Author as well now that this has been released. So here are the resources to where to go get more information. There's a link to Select MP Author Professional, which supports the fragments, a link to my fragment library. If you want to use Visual Studio, where to go get the Visual Studio authoring extensions. And then I've got an entire step-by-step blog series basically walking through what I just did using Visual Studio as well. So at this point, I don't know if we have any questions, but I'm happy to take some.
Okay, thank you very much, Kevin. And to our attendees, if you have some questions, you can submit those within the application. Kevin, I don't know if you see that, but you can actually open those as well and be able to see those. If you don't see them, I can scroll down through here and we'll find something.
I totally see them. Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now.
Okay.
George Dennis asked earlier, are we going to have a Visual Studio authoring extensions for Visual Studio 2017, or is it dead, and should we be using MP Author?
Visual Studio authoring extension is definitely not dead. So if you guys are familiar with user voice, I started a user voice for that specific issue. So there's it's systemcenterom.uservoice.com. And you can come in here, and this is where you go to talk about bugs, to talk about anything you want fixed, talk about next features in SCOM. We have a very active product group that is actively changing the update mechanisms and management packs that are coming out. So VSAE is far from dead. The only thing they asked is they wanted customer feedback on whether VSAE in Visual Studio 2017 was actually important to customers, because this is what they use to prioritize what they're going to put their development resources towards. So if that's important to you, come here and vote on this. You can see it's the top topic right now. It's got 46 votes. That's great. But the more customers that vote, and the more customers that vote through, and again, use this user voice to talk about anything you want to see in Ops Manager. So they haven't committed to that for Visual Studio 2017, but it is something that's on their radar, and they really want to see what the customer interest is before they invest in that. So definitely come here and vote on it if that's important to you.
Excellent. George also was asking, is SCOM dead and getting replaced by OMS?
Absolutely not. Yeah, I think we've tried to make that clear. Certainly, there's a lot of, Microsoft is very cloud first. A lot of the new development is going into OMS, but SCOM is still, and for the foreseeable future, is the on-premise monitoring solution. And you can monitor infrastructure as a service in Azure or whatever your cloud service is. So SCOM's definitely not dead. There's active development going. You're going to hear some announcements coming in the way that we're going to be changing, like update roll-ups, the way we're going to introduce new features into SCOM. So you're going to see some streamlining across several of our products that way. And so there are definitely things that make more sense in OMS. So log analytics, anywhere where we need tons and massive amounts of storage and things that used to bog SCOM down, they're really focusing on putting those things in the right place. But no, nothing's changing from that perspective.
Excellent. We actually have a fair number of questions open right now. Shall I just read them and you can quickly answer?
I'm lost, so I don't know where we're at.
Scott Moss asks, does MP Author support being installed in a VDI environment, which is virtual desktop, as I understand it? Yes. I believe the answer to that is yes. We've got no information that says you can't. The next one was from George again. How about creating advanced website monitors? Can we do that with MP Author Pro? So MP Author Pro, ignoring Fragments, has a wizard to create website monitors. It's based on the template that is provided with Operations Manager. I don't know what you want to say about Fragments. Is there anything for website fragments, Kevin?
I don't, but there's no reason I couldn't do something like that. The website monitoring uses standard modules, so I could totally create a fragment for that. The challenge with website monitoring is a lot of our wizards focus on the discovery component of what URL do you want and how do you want to provide that. So I've done some custom URL monitoring that like reads a CSV file as the point of entry. So a fragment is not very useful for that because really once you build the solution, you just modify the CSV file. You don't reuse that fragment over and over. If you were going to reuse code over and over, then a fragment would make sense.
Okay. Kevin, is a fragment possible to nest groups inside of groups?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, whether something is a group or a subgroup, that's stored in the XML. So it's basically a relationship that would say this contains that. So you could certainly do that. I don't know how reusable that would be because you can do that very easily in the console, and all that does is write it to a relationship. But that would certainly be possible in a fragment. So if you commonly needed multiple groups that were nested for an application set of groups, then you could totally do that in a frag.
Excellent. Next question. How to work with version control in MP Author. MP Author does not support version control. MP Studio does. Bill Carlson asks, how about building distributed applications?
Can we do that in Fragments? Yes. At the end of the day, distributed apps are just XML. There's nothing unique about them. They use a base class of system.service, and they contain other classes or other container-based classes. So if you built a distributed application and you liked it and you wanted to reuse that for every app you build, you could absolutely include that in your fragment. And actually, MP Author has a built-in distributed application wizard to help you build that first one to turn that into your fragment.
Okay. Eric Stackwell says, great demo, Kevin. Everybody likes the pat on the back. Arthur Sullivany asks, is it possible to create snippets like VSAE in MP Author? The answer to that is no. At this point in time, MP Author does not allow you to create snippets. It's a consumer of snippets. More than one customer has asked about that, and I think it's something we will consider in the future, but there's nothing definite right now. Phil Joder is asking, do you have a fragment for seeded classes?
I don't, but you could totally make that. So for instance, I have a fragment. Let me share my screen. So I have a fragment for a reg key, which is typically your seed class, right? We look for something light, right? So I have one for reg key and for WMI. And then I have a script-based PowerShell and VB script class in discovery. So there's no reason you couldn't start with your seed class and then create the class in discovery for VB based on VB script and PowerShell, which is your more advanced discovery, and target your seed class in the same management pack. So you can use these two fragments to create that seed and advanced discovery scenario.
Excellent. I'm trying to answer questions while we're going on here. So someone else, Jeremy Neer is asking, I would like to know if this is mainly for Windows or would there be any opportunity for Unix/Linux examples?
Totally Unix and Linux. I've already got examples of that. So I have a monitor-based shell command to do shell monitors in a fragment, and so all you have to do, you provide the same three things you're used to providing, and then whatever your shell command is. And so you can see how that works. It works just like the UI does for Unix and Linux. And then I have another one that I wrote for Unix and Linux. I'm not seeing it. Oh, class and discovery. So I discover an app based on the existence of a file. So you can have custom app classes for Unix and Linux just as easy to use and just as simple as a registry lookup.
Excellent. George has also asked, can you use MP Author to deploy to GSM? And I've got to admit, I don't know what GSM means in this context. For me, that's the global system of messaging for cell phones. Does that mean anything to you, Kevin?
No.
Okay, George,
the
perhaps.
Global Service Monitor, which is to monitor websites from the Microsoft Cloud.
Oh.
Yeah, I've had somebody ask me about like using fragments in GSM, and I've not investigated it. I don't know what we do through that custom connector because that requires a subscription and certificates and all of that. It might be possible to create XML, the XML component, assuming all that other stuff is working, but I've not investigated that, so I don't know.
Okay, I'll just reply, we really don't know. All right. Is there in OMS a good way to monitor applications? From Peter Weirges.
I'll say not yet. It depends on what you consider monitoring. OMS has the ability to collect performance data or log data and generate alarms based on analysis of that data as it comes in. So, but there's no concept in OMS today of a monitor, a real-time red-green scenario. That might be something that's being developed. I'm not that close to the OMS product team, so that's why I say Scrum is still the focus for on-premise systems-based real-time monitoring and alerting.
Monitoring. You think I'd be able to type by now?
I can't spell that word either.
Oh, administrator's the one I can never type in. Oh, I find that a horrible word to type in. Is it reasonable to make a fragment to be used in MP Author to create an application and the application components that are contained/hosted on a given health service? From Craig Perrow.
Yeah, I think that's what I demonstrated. You know, we don't create the app, but we create the discovery of the app and then any hosted objects within that. But that just comes down to your XML. You're writing that. If you're talking about app deployment, that's a different tool.
Yeah, I think it's, yeah, I think your answer is good. If you use Splunk/Sumo Logic with SCOM, if you use Splunk/Sumo Logic with SCOM, would you use OMS with SCOM instead? So OMS is not a replacement for SCOM? By Subramani, and I'm not going to be able to pronounce your last name properly, so I'll try not to insult you. So the question is, would you use OMS with SCOM instead for things like Splunk and Sumo Logic? Any thoughts?
I don't really know, unless you're just talking about how does OMS compare with Splunk. I'm probably not the best person to speak on that, and it's not really the scope of this conversation.
Okay.
Oh, feedback, not a question. Okay. All right.
And Brett Chevalier is asking which URL template. Not sure exactly what he wants.
So if I write a fragment, I wouldn't use either template. The whole concept of a template in the SCOM UI is templates are nothing but wizard generators, right? They are wizards that walk you through, and at the end of the day, they generate XML. If I'm going to write a fragment, I can write my fragment based on either template style, or I can do my own custom thing. It really just comes down to how skilled you are and experienced you are at understanding the modules and what you want to get out of them. So if you're not that skilled, you would just walk through the wizard, save it to a management pack, and then go back and use that XML that it created as your fragment.
Okay. Next question is from Jeremy Neer. Is it possible to focus on UNIX?
So I did that. Yep. So I showed examples of that. The one question I did see about a UNIX log file monitor, I don't have a rule for UNIX log file monitor. There's no, I do have one for text log, but there's no reason I couldn't create one for a UNIX log file monitor. I just haven't. I haven't had a customer request that yet, so I just haven't taken the time to write it.
Yeah. George Gain, can we monitor more complex websites and websites from external?
You can. I think I've kind of covered that already with what's possible. I don't think fragments are going to make that easier unless you feel like the wizards are complex. Like web application availability, which is what we use for GSM and for on-prem, is really easy to use. It creates really simple XML. It's a nice wizard. I don't know that I'd see fragments adding a lot of value there.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Actually, I'll probably be able to take this next one. How is MP Author at SNMP authoring? Thinking about Chris Bash's ex-SNMP MP for 2007. So as the guy who actually wrote most of the SNMP authoring for Silac, I'll take that one. We got the ability to create discoveries for SNMP devices. We have rules for probe events, performance, and traps, and we have monitors for probes and traps as well. What we don't have is good support for SNMP tables in there yet, and that's something that has been asked about. A number of customers have asked about it, but it's not yet on the schedule.
Mike, and to clarify, that support is in the paid version, the MP Author Pro, not on the free MP Author version, correct?
Right. Next question. We are using Selenium and PowerShell for advanced website authoring. That was from Jeremy. I guess that's a follow-up to his earlier question, I guess. Brian Casey asks, is there a limitation on PowerShell version targeted in XML-based PowerShell script monitors and alerts? Can you specify the version? So
our minimum requirement, and we've started enforcing this in SCOM 2016, is just PowerShell v2. So everybody that gets a SCOM agent in SCOM 2016 requires PowerShell v2 or later. That's a requirement. I'm 90% sure that that's correct. I'd have to go verify. I don't know that there's any requirements. You know, obviously, if you write something in a PowerShell-based management pack that is using something that the local version of PowerShell doesn't support, you'll get a script error. But I don't know of anything offhand. I'd have to go verify like what our native module, whether it's capable. My assumption is it uses the highest level of PowerShell that exists on the box. And there's actually a blog post on this that I saw where somebody discussed each version of PowerShell and what the SCOM agent will natively use in that module.
Okay. Can we create a service MP to monitor Windows service with intervals?
Yeah, so that's a real common use of the Fragment, right? Our built-in NT service monitor type, it stinks because it does not allow you, it does not expose as an override the ability to change the interval. So like by default, it checks services every 30 seconds and it has 2 consecutive samples. That's hard-coded. We do not expose that to you. Why, I have no idea. I think it was because when the monitor was first written, it didn't support consecutive samples, so the module was changed later, and because they didn't want to change it all the way through and impact everything by adding this new overridable setting. So a Fragment is a perfect solution for that, for you to create your own monitor type just by copying ours, and then adding and exposing that as an overridable parameter, and then now your service fragment will always have that available to you as you move forward.
Excellent. Is there any way to modify the MP without editing XML and use the MP author GUI? There is. For certain things, and in fact, Kevin's showing it right now. The properties view edit, you can see there, anything that's in bold can be changed without editing XML. Okay.
While you're looking there, Mike, I'm just going to jump in for a quick minute, and we're a few minutes over our 2 o'clock completion. And Kevin, I just want to make sure we're not keeping you from another meeting that you need to run to, so nope, by all means, okay.
I'm great
Very good.
Today. Yep.
I will leave it to you. There are more questions there. Mike's going through those, and sure, we very much appreciate it. I'm going to mute myself. And the questions and answers will be sent out as part of a follow-up. So any that we didn't get to, we'll make sure we do that afterwards as well. So, okay, back to you, Mike.
Okay, thanks. So that's Jeremy's question. Ken Lawson asks, is VB script still more usable in MPs than PowerShell?
Not at all. Not at all. So here's the problem with PowerShell. We'd love to do everything in PowerShell. And guess what? In SCOM 2016, we do. Every native VB script has been, for like the base OS and the core SCOM stuff, in 2016 has been changed over to PowerShell. So it doesn't mean all the management packs have converted their stuff over to PowerShell, because we don't do like version-specific management packs, but we would love to do everything in PowerShell. The problem is, the reality is, customers have 2003 and 2008 non-R2, and those don't have PowerShell by default, right? So unless the customers take it upon themselves to ensure PowerShell 2.0 exists everywhere, then we can't use PowerShell as the default scripting language. So that's why that's why VBScript is so pervasive. But everything I write today, I try to write it in PowerShell. The only time I write VBScript is when we need lowest common denominator. I still have to support customers with 2003, so I still have to write stuff with VBScript. So anytime you see me write VBScript, it's because of that. So you'll see class and discovery, I got PowerShell and VBScript. Monitor, I got PowerShell and VBScript. So I try to always do both and make them very, very similar, but I understand customers are not 100% ready to get away from VBScript yet. But all the development moving forward, especially in SCOM 2016, it assumes the agent has to have PowerShell, and so all scripts will be written in PowerShell and use our native PowerShell module.
Cool. Because I never could understand VBScript. PowerShell does make some sense to me.
Yep.
That's excellent. Subramani said use application insights. I guess that's a follow-up to his earlier question. Ken Lawson is saying he sees a lot of VB script fragments. I think we now know the reason for that. Michael Zmaus is saying, can we dynamically create user roles, brackets, by instances from discovery?
User roles? I don't think so. Because user roles, those are created and saved in a very special place in the database, so it's not 100% XML. So my answer is going to be no.
Yeah, secure references are the same way. You can define a secure reference, but it doesn't have the credentials associated with it.
That's right. That's right. So I can definitely use Fragments to create secure references for profiles, but I cannot create profile associations or credentials themselves.
Yeah. Can you explain the difference between snippets and fragments from Tyson?
Sure. So snippets are a way to use a file. So Visual Studio had this kind of capability already using snippets, and I've got a blog post that demonstrates it. But basically, a snippet uses this kind of XML tagging scheme like I've come up with for this. It uses something very similar where it automatically encapsulates what you want to change in tags, and it uses an input file to do it. Or you can just hit a new button and just change whatever's on that line. To be honest, if you're going to use an input file and you've got hundreds of workflows, snippets in Visual Studio is still the fastest solution. If you're going to click next and input the data, MP Author with Fragments, I believe, is a faster and better solution. So Fragments are basically a subset of snippets. The whole concept of snippets is to use an input file or to have this standard structured mechanism to create lots of workflows really fast.
Okay. Cliff Embry says, I believe you can send SCOM data up to OMS and let it be the workhorse with better reporting, is my understanding. Is that accurate?
So that is true. That is true. I mean, SCOM connects to OMS so that you can send alert data and things like that up there. But it doesn't, again, that's a connection. It doesn't replace SCOM in any way.
Yeah. Okay. Brett Chevalier, if I wrote a custom perf collection rule, can I have SCOM send that to OMS? Pretty sure the answer to that is yes.
Yep.
Subramani again is saying it's analytics based. I'm afraid we've probably lost the thread of what you were going for there.
Let's skip all the OMS type stuff because we really want to focus on fragments here.
Do you have a fragment for class extensions? If so, what about network device classes?
So totally could. I don't have one. I'm very careful when I extend classes. I don't want to make that too easy. We had a user voice somebody submitted that said, make classes extendable in the UI, in the console. And I'm like, no, because the problem, if I extend a class, extending a class is really a misnomer. Extending a class says, I want to create a new class, and I'm just going to use an existing base class. So we call it extending. Like if I create a new class and I use the base class of Windows Computer, that's what we call extending classes. And there's a very specific reason to do that, a very good reason to do that, but you must be careful because when you do that, you create a duplicate set of instances that inherits all the monitoring and all the state roll-up. And so the load on SCOM can be significant, especially at large enterprise scale. So you have to be careful when you're extending classes. So I almost don't want to make that too easy because then I'd be afraid that everybody would go do it and I'd be the blame for that. So.
Yeah, okay. I'm just going to look through for fragment-based questions.
Okay.
Insights, no. Do you have a fragment snippet for cross-platform log file rule?
I already answered that one, yeah. I don't, but there's no reason I couldn't.
Okay. Are there any fragments for product or company knowledge?
So there is a section, there's no fragment for adding company knowledge, and to this date, when I do company knowledge, I use MP Author. NP author is the easiest way to edit. You know, anybody who's been working with SCOM for a while, they know how cryptic and impossible it is to edit company knowledge in using the SCOM console because of our dependence on vStore and Word and all that. And I hear that story is getting better, but I just abandoned it and I use NP author to do that. There's no reason that you couldn't add that. So if you look at like my empty fragment, and you look in the language packs and display strings, it's got a section already there for knowledge articles. The challenge is this is written in formatted HTML. So if you ever look at knowledge articles in XML, it's ugly. So what I do is I come into NP author, and when I'm done, I'll edit my knowledge right here in NP author because it is so simple and it makes really nice, pretty formatted product knowledge. So I'd say use the tool.
Excellent. Kevin, I have a bunch of fragments I'd like to contribute to your collection that includes things like schedule filters and cookdown. How do I submit these? I think that's from Joey Major, by the way. I think there's a bigger movement on here where people are asking about fragments on GitHubs and ways of creating a fragment community. You got any thoughts on that?
You know, I'd love to take all your work and take credit for it. So you know, kevin.holman@microsoft.com. No, I'm kidding. So, you know, we need a good fragment community. I've got mine on a Technic Gallery. Obviously, GitHub's an option if we want to do like community branching of stuff. I was kind of turned off by that. I'm not 100% on that bandwagon yet, but I see value in all of that. My fragments are free. Take them, do whatever you want, republish them, say you wrote them, I don't care. But yeah, I think that to be really effective, we need a good place to put everything or to know where that's at. So I don't have a good answer for that yet. If there's something that you want me to add to my fragment library, feel free to send it to me, and what I'll do is I'll put in the comments, you know, your email or your name or your blog or nothing if you want to remain anonymous. So if you want to see that included in my library, I'm happy to include it. Obviously, I'll have to assume that it provides some kind of value, but yeah, and you know, it doesn't deter from things. But the more people that just post this stuff on blogs or Technic Gallery or GitHub or wherever, the better the community is going to get.
Guys, I'm going to jump in there for a quick minute. Silect has always been, you know, a strong member of this community. You know, that's part of the reason we made NP author free available. And so I would like to just say, if you would like to send your fragments to us, we will find a way to make them available, whether it's through our website or another location, and we'll disseminate that information. You know, we've got over 7,000 users of our products. So once we do find a source or a location for them and the means to properly make them available, we can send that information out so everybody can access that information. So Kevin, appreciate that you've made your library available, and when you use MP Studio or MP Author Professional, there is a link in there in case you're not sure where to find those. So just launching the import fragment at the bottom, you'll see there's a link there. So if Kevin happens to change his location, we will, you know, we won't need to make any changes to the product. So we'll find a way to make the others available. There'll probably need to be some research done to make sure we're not making something available that could be problematic. I'm not sure how that'll get handled, but we'll definitely find a way to make these available to the community. So by all means, I send a thing down in the chat window. You'll see that's info@silect.com. If you want to send your fragments in, we'll probably want to play with them as well, and we might be able to make them available somehow, even in MP Studio at some point. Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. Next question is from Eric Stockwell. Will fragments make it easier to monitor thousands of SNMP OIDs?
It certainly could. So we can use something like a wildcard. So if we had, you know, let's say that we wanted to alert on a trap, and we had thousands of them to do. Now, if you're talking about thousands of independent rules, the answer is yes. It's very, you know, I already have one for SNMP, so I can just browse, and I have a rule for trap on an OID, and so all you have to do is provide the OID, and then once you import that, you add the reference that's necessary. If you had thousands of them, truly thousands, they were all different OIDs and you wanted different descriptions, I would probably look to snippets and use like a CSV to feed that in. But if we're talking about tens or hundreds, or you can see how easy that is each time to add a new one based on just an OID. And I have another one in my frags that I just wrote the other day that does OID and varbind. So it looks in a specific SNMP varbind and looks for a substring. But
now just for what it's worth, there people will have to edit that because the trap returns the varbinds, and you're showing varbind 10 and varbind 15 on that.
Right. This is hard coded.
Yeah, the variables that come back are not necessarily going to match that, so you will have to do
absolutely. Yeah, this is not, I don't think fragments are the solution to knowing nothing about XML, but it's certainly for things that are very repeatable, you can certainly use them for that purpose. But what it really does is it gives you an example of how something's done, so you only have to make minor changes to make it fit your requirement.
Yeah, and I'll put in a word for the SNMP support in MP Author Pro and in MP Studio. It does some very good stuff with traps and shows you what variables are actually coming back from the trap based on the MIB file, so it will help with this sort of issue. And of course, you could make a fragment out of it. Thank you guys for a great presentation from George. Thank you, George. Can we create a web monitor through an ADFS authentication with MP Studio? There's another question about authentication and website stuff. I haven't thought about that, Kevin.
So website authentication, that I think if you're talking about like writing a fragment for authenticated websites, the only authenticated websites that we support is through the transaction-based template. The availability template doesn't support authentications. So the transaction template, when it creates that, when you do that, it creates those secure reference associations. So I'm not, we certainly have the ability to put that into a management pack. I just don't know how useful that would be because of what you would have to change. But if you have a huge pain point around URL monitoring and the tool doesn't do it, certainly I would investigate Fragments to see if that's possible. I just don't have first-hand experience of actually doing that.
Yeah. Okay. Brett Chevalier says, thanks guys, you're awesome. Always great to listen to your stuff. I learned something new. Always learn something new. Jeremy Simpson says, thanks everyone. Big thank you to the Kevin Holman for his masterful insights and instruction from Bill Carlson. Do you have any fragments with a schedule filter example in them for alert blackout periods from Joey Major?
I don't, but I'll be honest, MP Author has that built into the UI. So what I would do is I would just create that rule in MP Author that has like a Windows event alert rule, and it has this ability on the schedule. I'm going to have to put in data, aren't I? So you'll see right here there's a schedule tab, and when you get there, it's got a wizard to let you put in like days of the week mask and business hours, things that are kind of complex to do in the Scrum console. It's really easy to do here, and then take that and put that into a fragment, and then you would just have to learn what do I need to change and encapsulate in that pound in the fragment itself to do it.
Yeah. Okay. Next question is from Brian Casey, who's asking, will this webinar be made available in video for us to watch later? Yes, it will. You'll be getting email on that. Ken Lawson says, thanks. Brian Zabchuk says, it's too bad you can't embed both into an MP and there'd be logic to use whichever was applicable.
He's talking about PowerShell versus VBScript, and yeah, we can. So.
Oh, what a neat idea.
Yep.
Brian, yeah. Could you unseal an MP and import into MP Author Pro so it could be modified from Jeremy Neer? Yes, you can do that. What you can't do is reseal it. So if that's an MP that has overrides referencing it, You can't reseal it with the original keys.
Well, because you won't own the keys, right? But you could totally reseal it with your own keys.
seal
It'll
it with
just be
your
a
own.
new MP at that point.
Yeah. So, you could take a standard Microsoft, say SQL MP, crack it open, but just save it as XML. There's an option to do that. Do whatever you want to it, and it just cannot be Microsoft's signature anymore, but it could be your signature.
Yep.
Can we have different types of log file monitor fragments from George?
Yeah, so honestly, if there's a specific fragment that you think would make your life a lot easier, then go to my Q&A section on my fragment downloads and just tell me what you're looking for. So I'm not going to develop stuff that I don't know that customers need, and generally I let my PFE customers drive what I write. But if there's something that you think would be very useful for you and for other people, put it in the Q&A and I'll start working on it.
Excellent. Michael's mouse is asking, where can I see with alert was sent by email using subscriptions? Well, that doesn't have anything to do with fragments, I think.
Yeah, probably out of scope for this conversation.
Yeah, sorry, Michael. Stephen Peck says the problem with GitHub is that SCOM XML is cryptic enough. Yeah. Figuring out GitHub adds more pain. Well, can't disagree with that. Cyprian Frankowski asks, is it possible to build reports with MP Studio? The answer to that in the big sense is no. We do allow views and dashboard views to be created, but it's not what I would generally call reports, and I don't think it's what you're asking about. So unfortunately, the answer is no. Zachary Rohr says, a fragment catalog similar to how SCOM 2016 has the new MP catalog would be pretty sweet in MP Studio. We agree. Obviously not going to make any promises, but it's a good thing to think about. Ben McCary says, excellent as usual, many thanks. Subramani says, thanks, great info. How can we troubleshoot filed monitors/rules? The workflow analyzer keeps crashing from George. Not exactly part of this discussion, I'm afraid. I always thought that debugging in MPs would be really useful. Jeremy Neer says, perfect, thanks for clarifying. Michael Schmaus again. How can we start? Oh, okay. How can we create? Yes, that makes sense. How can we create a log file monitor with calendar?
That's an example that is built into MP Author. So when you go and you create, now they don't have a log file monitor here, or like a rule. I don't know if there's one for logs or not. I don't think so.
I don't recall anyone ever asking about it.
So yeah, I don't do a lot. But all you need is the scheduler data source information. If you look at my fragments, I already have a log file rule that alerts based on text in the log, right? And so it just asks you for the necessary information. Well, one of the things you'll see in here is the scheduler data source for, oh no, this actually doesn't use a scheduler data source. This is real time because it reads the log in real time. So what you'd have to do is you'd almost have to write a complex data source that adds the scheduler that puts a time frame around when this would be active. And that's where, and back to an example, I would use the SCOM 2007 R2 authoring console to build something like that. But what you're asked for is actually quite complex, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Okay. That's Michael. And the last one is Mitchell Ludi. Great work, guys. And I think that gets to the end of the particular questions here that are applicable to us.
Okay.
So, take it away, Randy.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mike, for reading out those questions. And so any questions that did not get answered, we'll do our best to provide some kind of an answer, and that'll get circulated afterwards. Just give us a little bit of time to process the recordings and get everything uploaded. We'll send a follow-up email sometime very soon. I would say probably tomorrow sometime we'll send that out. I would like to, on behalf of everyone at Silect and everybody attending the call, thank you, Kevin, very much. That was an excellent presentation. When I saw this feature in November, I thought this is going to make a difference, and we need to get this somehow integrated into MP Studio. So we really appreciate the fact that you've helped us along the way with that process. The library is awesome. I mean, I'm 12, 13 years removed from a technical world, but it makes it easy for me to author management packs that actually do something. And so thank you for the presentation today, Kevin.
You bet. My pleasure.
And I think the attendees all agree, because we still have 119 attendees on, even though we're 25 minutes over schedule. That's
yes.
Unbelievable. So excellent work, Kevin.
Thank you.
And that was awesome. Just a little wrap up, a couple of reminders. We have a flash sale available for you. If you would like to see a one-on-one web demo of MP Studio and more of the fragments, we can arrange a one-on-one web demo. You can simply email me and we'll set that up. We will send the download link, okay, along with an eval license that's good for 30 days. That flash sale is only good for a couple of weeks till the end of the month, so don't hesitate. Download, get your eval running. And if you have any questions along the way, let us know. So that's it. In closing, I'd like to thank everybody who joined us on the call. We had a couple hundred people, and that's awesome. So thank you for joining us today. Note, I will stop the recording.